Do you want to attack like a chess master? I believe you do. So that's why in this lesson we will look at some of the most famous motifs that you should know. So the more you know, obviously, the easier for you in an actual game is to recognize these patterns. So we are going to start with something that's called the Greek gift. It's a very common sacrifice that involves sacrificing the bishop here on d3. So the point here, if black plays the short castle, he's like completely oblivious what is happening here. The point is that we want to sacrifice the bishop to expose the king and then hunt it down with the help of the knight and the queen. So the point here is that we play bishop takes on h7, as I already said. I mean, if black doesn't take it, you can always just go back or play knight g5 anyway, with the same idea to play queen h5. So it seems that black has to accept it. We play knight g5 check, and typically black responds with king g8. However, I think that what you have to keep in your mind that there might be moments when the Greek gift is not going to work. Why? Because maybe there will be scenarios where he can play king g6. So after king g6, the typical maneuvers that you have is either queen d3 check, queen g4, or as it's here, you play h4. You try to checkmate the king. Now h4 here decides the fate of the game, because if black attempts to run away with the king and play f5, we play h5 check. The only move for the king is on h6, and knight takes on e6, discovered check you see here, and black drops the queen. Sometimes in similar positions, of course, also you can play queen d3. For example, queen d3, give a check, black responds with f5, you take on f6, maybe there's a checkmate as well. Sometimes also queen g4 works just fine. Threatened with discovered check, but again, you need to watch out for f5, queen g3, and moves like f4. Is this working or not working? So be on your guard. By the way, the same idea, the same motif could also be with colors reversed. So right now we're looking from the white's perspective, the idea to take on h7 and knight g5. So the same could happen from the black's perspective as well, given we would have a different pawn structure. Now let me show you another example. Still involving the pawn on h7. So here we have a beautiful position, strong pawn center here, strong bishops, and the king is weak. So here, a typical chess master after bishop takes on e5, which is a huge blunder, because black is unaware of the tactical motifs, we can again execute bishop takes on h7 check. So this is not really like a classical Greek gift, because we do not have the knight to play knight g5. If black takes it, we play queen h5 check, king g8, and now the key idea is to play bishop takes on e5. Now black doesn't really have to take it, but let's say if he does, you need to know this pattern. You take on f7 check, and after king h7, you do not take the bishop, but actually you go for the mate. You play rook f5, and rook h5 is seemingly inevitable checkmate. So check here, king h1, actually watch out for queen e1. Feels like it's immediately winning for black, but no, you have rook f1 and you simply win the game on the spot. Sometimes this idea with the queen on f7, you will have access to rook f3, rook h3. Sometimes the access will be to rook f4, rook h4. Same motif, slightly different execution. Now let's have a look at with a similar Greek gift idea, but with a pawn on h4. Again, we see we have the same pawn structure, strong pawns on d4 and e5. The black knight has retreated to d7, so here black castles short. Again, black always should be very careful about this move, because typically bishop takes on h7 might be a problem, but it's not going to work immediately. Why? Because if you take on h7 immediately and you play knight g5 and you think it's the same, no, I mean black just takes it. So you might even play queen h5 check, black will play bishop h6, or black will play king g8. Either way, you don't have a mate. But it doesn't mean that the idea is wrong. We can improve the idea. So we're going to play h4. And h4 for this type of pawn structure is a very typical move, because with h4 we secure the g5 square, and on top of the bishop takes on h7 and knight g5 idea, we also might push h5, h6, sometimes even rook h3 and rook g3 might be an interesting idea to bring more pieces for a king's attack. So just to showcase what happens if black is oblivious to your ideas and he plays c5. That's a big mistake, of course, because now the Greek gift is going to work again. Now the point is after king takes on h7, knight g5, I suppose after king g6 you can play h5, so that's going to be pretty similar motif what we already saw before. This is going to be a discovered check from the bishop on c1. Now if black goes king g8, we play queen h5, essentially it's the same. Bishop takes on g5, and now is the key idea. We play h takes on g5, and you see we have not castled short just yet. And the rook at h1 sometimes can become immediately very active and very deadly in a combination with a queen. So again, king g6 is probably a mate check here, and I don't know, like I feel like there's a checkmate immediately, like g6. This king cannot survive the onslaught with so many pieces attacking it, so it's just a matter of time until there's a mate. I think, yeah, I already found it. That's a mate on the board, so you can't really do it. But if the king goes back to g8, now you play queen h5. You're threatening with either checkmate on h7 or h8. And now the key move here, if black plays f6, tries to escape to f7, you shut the door by playing g6. So king f7 no longer works, and you have queen h8 or even queen h7. Probably queen h8 is simpler, immediately with a checkmate. Now the next position is pretty famous. So here black played rook d8 again, which is a blunder. Probably he had to eliminate the Lasker bishop. And this is what we call the Lasker sacrifice. So Emil Lasker, the second world champion, he is rumored to be brought to practice this very famous two bishop sacrifice to expose the king. So bishop takes on h7, again the same motive. We play h7 to expose the king. Black seemingly has to accept. We play queen h5 check. Black has to go away, and now comes the key move. Bishop takes on g7. So this is the key idea. We're threatening with queen h8 checkmate, and if black takes it, we play queen g5 check to make sure the king cannot escape, and at least we have a draw with queen h5, queen g5, but specifically here, rook c4 immediately is a simple mate on the board. Again, sometimes you will have access to rook c3, sometimes the rook will be on e1 with rook e3, rook h3, rook h3. It really depends on the concrete position, but you will already recognize the pattern and you can decide it yourself whenever such an opportunity arises. Now another motive, another execution of the same idea is now bishop takes on h7, check, queen h5, and bishop g7. So this is a mate threat. If black plays f6, you can continue the attack with, actually I'm not really sure, I think it's just queen h8 here or queen g6. You need to watch out for the queen e8 idea, but f6 is a pretty difficult move to make. So I would still imagine that king takes on g7 will be played. Now you cannot play queen g5, but you can play queen g4 to make sure the king cannot escape. So king f6 is going to be just a mate on the board. Pretty cute actually. So if the king goes here, now you see we have rook f3. So rook f3, rook h3, maybe black can put the bishop here, people are rook h3, and the mate is inevitable. Maybe black can give away the queen, but I mean, he's losing. Now we have another motive. So we are right now looking at the possibilities how you can sacrifice a minor piece to expose the defenses of your opponent. So here the knight on f5, I think it's a very, very scary knight, because if the knight is so close to the opponent's king that is barely guarded, you should always look for some tactical motives. Here in this position, black didn't think about it. He played a4. So he was thinking, I'm going to generate some counterplay here and I'm kind of protecting everything. Well, no, there's knight g7. Now this completely demolishes black's defenses. Now the point here is that king g7, we give a check. You can't take it, that's a pin. And after king h8, you play queen g5, pinning the knight. You can see black cannot protect the knight at all. So even more, he's going to suffer catastrophic losses, because after bishop takes at f6, black will lose the queen. Now the same motive happened in the next game. So this is Sergei Karyakin with white against Vasily Malinin. So here, again, Karyakin, like very similarly to the previous example, he had the knight on f5, so he knows that this is a very strong attacking piece. And black played a short castle, not suspecting that there's something about to happen, and he probably thought that he will play something like d6 or d5 and kill the knight and everything's going to be alright. Now Karyakin apparently had studied the classics and he knew this shot, knight takes on g7. And again, black doesn't really have to take it, but if he doesn't take it, then the king is very weak and wide open for a direct attack. So here Malinin decided to take it. And now came the double attack. bishop h6 check. So the key idea here is that Karyakin is sacrificing the bishop to bring the queen in the game with a check. And there's nothing that black can do. So a king g8 is, again, terrible. You could just play something like queen d2 and continue with this king set attack. The rook is not gonna go anywhere. So black decided to take it, and after queen d2 check, if he goes here, it's simply a check, 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 and queen h6. You see, this is the double attack. The pawn at h7 is lost, and the queen on a4 for black is not really helping the defense. So what happened here, black tried his luck by trying to hide the king further with king h5. Karyakin played g4. King h4, queen h6 is going to swift mate on the board. So knight g4 had to be played. Queen g4 check. It seems that black has still some hope, but no hope here because bishop e2 is incoming. Also rook f5 is a check, and essentially black will lose the queen. Another example here, a typical motif that you should be aware of, that you can use your minor pieces to completely demolish your opponent's defenses by sacrificing on f7, which is also a very vulnerable square. And here we can play knight f7. After knight f7, black has no choice because the queen is under attack, and yeah, otherwise everything just starts to fall apart. So black decides to take it, and now comes another sacrifice. Knight e5, opening up the h5 square for the queen. Black decided to take it, queen h5, and now look at this. So black has two extra pieces, but everything is kind of disconnected and somewhere on the other side of the board. So essentially what you're trying to do, you're trying to checkmate with two pieces. You have the queen, you have the bishop against the bare king. And the fact that your opponent has so many pieces to the queen side that are doing nothing, it doesn't matter at all. So black played king g7 here and play bishop g6. So simple, queen f7 mate is inevitable. There's no knight e5. The queen is stuck, the rook is stuck, the bishop is stuck. Yeah, this bishop is useless. Just like that, white is winning. Of course, another typical motif is we looked at sacrifice on h7, we looked at sacrifice on g7 and f7 in similar positions, but also, of course, the pawn on h6. This is why there is a principle. You should always be very careful about pushing the pawns in front of your king, because if you do, they might be formed as what we call a hook, a target that you can target with your pieces. It's easier to defend these pawns when they're closer to the starting position. As soon as your opponent plays something like h6, now this pawn could be a target for some tactical motives, like in this position. So white has two strong bishops here looking at the king, and you see, and the king here doesn't really have proper defense. I mean, he has some pieces here at the queen side, but not anything at all at the king side. So bishop takes on h6 is actually a very easy sacrifice. So black decides to take it, queen takes on h6. Now this is a checkmate. By the way, another idea you would have to know, sometimes, of course, queen h7, queen h8 is immediately a mate. This is also a very famous pattern. Bishop h7, bishop g6, delivering a mate. Sometimes this is the only way to win the game. So here black decided to play f5. We play queen g6, king h8. We already have a draw in our pocket if we find nothing. And simple bishop takes on f5 is good enough. So we're threatening with a mate. Black decides to take it. And queen f5 again is just good. But also rook d3 immediately kills the game because rook h3 is a big threat. So there's nothing that black can do. Maybe he goes here, we go here. And actually I think we just, after rook h3 is going to be queen h7. I think we just take on f5. And if black somehow holds on the position with queen h7, if you find nothing else, okay, fine, we just trade it, collect the bishop on h4, and we're easily winning the position. So the final example I would like to show you is Ray Enigma's own game that he played on the Leech's platform against international master Vyacheslav Zarobitsky. So it's going to feature some of the key ideas we discussed previously. So here black played queen h7, seemingly unaware that his king might be in danger. Now, black's idea is quite easy to understand because he thought he's going to play bishop a6, trade off the bishop, maybe trade the queens as well if possible, and then somehow capitalize on his better pawn structure at the queen side, some b5, b4 ideas, or takes, b5, b4, and try to do some damage. Now came a very strong move from Ray. He played queen c2. The question is how do you defend the pawn on h7? Because if black here plays h6, this is actually a huge blunder. Why? Because white can take it and play queen d2. And just like that, there's no defense against queen h6 because king g7 is a very simple knight h5 check, followed by queen h6, and that's definitely a mate. So here after queen d2, also bishop g5 is going to be an easy mate. You see we have enough pieces to hunt the king. Queen h6, queen h7 is just a mate on the board. And basically there's nothing that black can do. Probably some desperate f5, and even this position with queen h6, queen e6, knight h5, knight g5, it just looks too good to be true. So, of course, Zarubitsky was too good to play this. He played g6, but now this weakens a lot of dark squares in the position. So you would expect that bishop h6 is the obvious move to hit the queen, but here Ray actually found a better move. He played queen d2. So his idea is to play queen h6 and threat him with some knight g5 or knight h5 ideas. Now black tried to execute his idea by trading the Lasker bishop with a6, bishop b1. This bishop is an instrumental piece to start the kingside attack. Black played knight a5, basically closing his eyes and praying that the attack at the kingside is not going to go through. Queen h6 was the play for white. Black played knight b3, hitting the rook and the bishop, and there comes knight h5. That's it. The game is immediately over. This is a mate immediately, and after g takes on h5, queen h7 is a beautiful checkmate. That's it. Now, if you study these examples carefully, you're making your first steps to play as an actual chess master. Recognize the patterns, do puzzles, and eventually you'll get there.